All right, I am here with Dr. Terry Spence, aka the Duradoctor in Las Vegas, and we're going to be discussing his fast. He has currently been on a 28-day fast. As of today, he's shooting for 40 days total, and I would love to talk to him about why he started, where it all began, some of the obstacles he's hit so far, and stuff like that. So, Dr. Terry Spence, your fast. One, how are you feeling today, day 28 right now?
Feeling fantastic. I got lots of energy, had a good day at the clinic, and no symptomatic picture whatsoever.
Awesome. And then what was kind of your biggest reason between starting this fast? I know you've told me before you've done a fast in the past as well that was this long. So what was your reason for starting this fast?
This particular fast was started really for spiritual reasons. And this is an extremely important point when we're talking about why a person would fast. It's very, very important to have goals set on what you're really trying to achieve. I think that's a really important point. So for me, just a brief story, a couple weeks before what they call Yom Teruah, which is a Feast of Trumpets, I felt like the Holy Spirit was telling me to do a 40-day fast. Well, that's a long time, and I've only done one other one. That was in 1994. So I take this very seriously because it can be dangerous. However, that being said, I decided to start the fast on the Day of Atonement, which is an annual fast where you don't eat any food or drink any water, and just started journeying with the idea that you use wisdom, which I think is important to talk about as I unfold my journey. And now we're on day 28, and I will say that when I started, I weighed 183 pounds, and now I'm down to 160, but that weight has stabilized over the last 10 days. Another important point we can maybe get into a little bit later.
Awesome, yeah. And then what was the reason, because you said the year that you did your last fast, and why did you do your last fast back in the past?
The last fast was also a spiritual fast where I was praying and interceding for something. This particular fast, of course, is very important to me because it's about turning our nation around back to scriptural values. That's why I'm fasting.
And what year did you do your last fast in?
1996.
Okay, so it's been quite a while. So for people listening, how did you prepare for this? Because obviously this is a much longer fast going for 40 days. What were some of the things you did prepare so you didn't detox hard, right, coming into this?
You know, how to prepare for a fast, again, very, very, very important. First, I'll talk to you about what I did to prepare and what the extreme could be. What I mean by that is because I have a fairly clean diet, in fact, pretty extreme compared to most Americans, I was able to jump into the fast by doing a complete 24-hour raw juice before I jumped into the beginning of this 40-day fast. Now, that being said, if you are a person who has a very, very poor diet and poor lifestyle, what I recommend for people to do then is they need to prepare for 9 or 10 days. And this is what I recommend. I recommend that they take the first 3 days, cut out all animal products. Then they take another 3 days, and they will just do about 50% raw food and 50% cooked with their normal diet they've been doing. Then the next 3 days, you do a 3-day juice fast. And if you don't get through that, then I recommend don't fast. I recommend let that be an awesome sign to you that you need to make some changes before you begin the fast. Otherwise, if you're doing very well and you feel pretty good and you haven't had much symptoms, then you can jump into a fast.
Awesome. And so now that you're on day 28, is there any memorable days or some of the maybe harder days or easier days you've noticed throughout this time or periods? Is the first 7 days the hardest? Is the first 2 weeks the hardest? Are there times when you're like, should I move on? Are there changes you've made to your fast and stuff like that along this journey?
Yes, absolutely have made changes. Now, the changes are going to be based on, and this is an important point, paying very close attention to your body and monitoring what's going on. So here's my journey. The first 14 days, I drank just filtered water out of my stainless steel Berkey filter. Then on day 15, I went to bed, and I noticed I was getting a slight leg cramp. So that told me, because I was paying attention, that I was low on electrolytes, which means my filter was cleaning out a lot of stuff I probably needed. So I decided to do Dr. Steven Sinatra's electrolyte. He calls it Electro Plus Cardio, which is the best electrolyte powder that I know of on the planet. Or you can make up your own electrolyte water, but it's very, very important to have electrolytes. Well, that solved any possibility of me having a cramp. 3 days later, I noticed that I woke up and I was a bit weak. As soon as I jumped into prayer, meditation, and scripture, felt great. But again, it was a signal to me to pay attention. So a friend of mine did a bile scan. I wanted him to check my chemistry. Everything was looking good, but the potassium. So wisdom says, make a potassium broth. So I made up a really awesome potassium broth and been taking that since day 17 through today at about 16 ounces a day, which is important when you think about the fasting too, because you're only putting about 40 calories in for each cup. So if you split it up throughout the day, then you're not breaking your fast. Very important.
And then when you're in this fasting state, have you noticed like your energy levels drop, or have you noticed like you can keep a pretty normal day throughout this, or some things you can't do you normally do during this state, or anything like that you've noticed over these last 28 days?
Okay, again, this is my journey. So my journey is zero symptomatic picture at all because of the way I did it, except for that one day with a little bit of cramping, right? Full energy, full days at the office, no lack of energy. Also, there are other things I incorporated which are very important. Like, in other words, you don't do intense workouts, but you got to keep moving. So I've been doing maybe 2 to 4 miles of brisk walking, maybe 25 to 100 push-ups, and that is it on the exercise. Another important thing is to go into this thing and be thinking and speaking life thoughts to yourself and others. Keep that positive mental outlook and be excited about where this journey is going to take you. Also, your family is going to be worried about you on a long-term fast. Very important to include your family and let them know you have a wisdom plan. And then as you go along, keep in touch and let them know that you're doing really, really well. Also, during this particular fast, I did do 2 coffee enemas spread out about a week apart to let my liver cleanse. In this fasted state, I also played my piano. I also listened to good music. I read, I meditated, and I prayed. So just to name a few of the things that I was doing during this journey.
So since you mentioned coffee enema, which I know is one of your favorite things in the world, have you noticed that when you do the coffee enemas in a fasting state, do they feel different, affect you different, or does it feel the same as when you would normally do it? Or since you're in a more sensitive state, do you feel like it impacts you differently?
It does impact me differently, but not in the way people think. Because your stomach is empty, It's a lot easier to hold the coffee in there for the allotted amount of time to get the maximum benefit that you want for your liver to be purged.
Interesting. And then is there any other benefits you've noticed over these last 28 days that you think are interesting or you'd like to share about besides, obviously, weight loss, energy levels, stuff like that you normally get when you're in a fasting state? Any other benefits you've noticed?
The biggest thing is I feel like this is actually the most successful energetic fast I've ever been on. It almost seems supernatural because I've just had no drop in energy whatsoever, and I've been busy seeing patients all day long. I'm not tired when I get home at night. I will say a downside, if there is one, is that I do get up and have to pee about 3 times a night, which breaks up your sleep, and sleep is very, very important. But it's obviously because I'm putting in so much liquid throughout the day, probably 96 ounces of fluid.
Yeah, and that I would love to ask you kind of what a typical day looks like for you when you're fasting in terms of like how you wake up, how much liquid you drink throughout the day and stuff like that, if you take any naps or anything like that to help promote your fast.
Excellent question. So when I first get up in the morning, this will be kind of my day as it goes. I'll get up in the morning, and I'm going to get up and drink 8 to 16 ounces of water with the electrolytes in it. And I don't do that every day because I maybe do it every 2 or 3 days. I just kind of go by how my body feels. Then I'll turn on some good music and do my exercise routine. And then I meditate and pray about our country. Then I go to work. At lunch, I always lay down at the office and try to do a 20-minute power nap. Then I work in the afternoon. I come home, and during this fast, I'm not focused on anything else. So I come home, and I'm getting to bed on a regular basis around 8 o'clock at night, and I'm getting up around 4 o'clock in the morning, and that's kind of my day.
Awesome. And then as you come to the end of this thing, because I know you're shooting for 40 days, is there an exit plan or strategy to come out of this in the best way, or like how you're going to implement food and stuff back into your diet, or is there like a plan you have in place for that?
Yeah, to exit a fast this long, or any fast for that matter, you want to go out of it like you came in. So in my case, I'll take 1 to 3 days to just do raw juice. Then I'll move back into raw food. Then I'll incorporate some amount of cooked food. And I may or may not jump back into animals. So basically, you unwind that way no matter what kind of fast you're doing. But I will say, for you people who have a very poor diet, let this be a great time to readjust your lifestyle and change your diet so when you come back out, you're going to a higher place. I'm going to say something here too that I just thought of. One of the negatives, if you will, of a long-term fasting is that you can get kind of a strange energy high. And so people with eating disorders, this is out there. There's information out there about this. It can be addictive, and they can actually make their problem worse with this addictive energy they're after during a long-term fast.
Yeah, because it feels good. I mean,
Yep.
I fast every day in intermittent fasting. I've definitely gotten addicted to the high of the morning and not being tired after meals and stuff like that. When it comes to your exit, how many days would you say you would probably do the raw juice fast before putting in whole foods in your body?
If you have a clean diet like I do, I would not do more than 3 for me, and probably 1 would do it. On the other hand, you come out the same way as I recommended before. 3, 3, and 3.
Okay. 3, 3, 3, and 3. All right. That's all I've got about